Marsha didn't plan on holding anyone's baby that day. She came to clean the house, the same big, cold house she'd been coming to for weeks now. She was used to the silence, the spotless floors, the way everything felt expensive but unlived. But today something was different. There was no sound at all. No nanny. No voices. No clatter of toys. Just stillness that felt wrong. Then she heard it. A baby's cry, loud and full of panic, echoing down from upstairs. She froze. This wasn't part of the job. Clean the kitchen, mop the floors. Don't touch what doesn't need touching. But this wasn't a mess on the floor. This was a baby crying so hard it hurt to listen. So she followed the sound, step by step, up the stairs, down the long hallway. The nursery door was cracked open. Inside, a tiny boy, maybe 6 months old, red-faced and screaming in his crib. No blanket, no bottle, no one else in sight. Marsha didn't think. She just moved, picked him up gently, held him close, started swaying the way she used to when her daughter was little. He didn't stop crying right away, but something in his body softened against her, like he could feel. She meant no harm, like he trusted her. Slowly, the screams turned into hiccups, and the hiccups faded into quiet. She was still holding him when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw a man in the doorway, tall, sharp jaw, expensive clothes. He didn't speak, just stood there, confused, eyes locked on his son in the arms of a stranger. Marsha stayed calm, even though her heart picked up. She wasn't stealing anything. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She just couldn't leave the baby crying like that. I didn't see anyone here, she said quietly. He was screaming. I couldn't leave him like that. The man, Julian Cross, didn't yell. He didn't demand an explanation. He just blinked, like he was trying to figure out if this was real. He stepped into the room, looking around. The bottle on the windowsill, the full diaper, the empty room, the silence. I thought the nanny was here all day, he said, mostly to himself. Marsha nodded toward the baby. I think he's hungry and soaked. Diaper's been full a while. Julian's face shifted, not angry, more like embarrassed. He reached out like he was going to take the baby, then pulled back. You want me to change him? Marsha asked, not sarcastic, just practical. He gave a weak nod. Yeah, please. She moved like she'd done this 100 times before, because she had. She cleaned him up, put on a fresh onesie, and rocked him again as he settled. Julian watched from the rocker, still quiet. You do this often? He asked. I have a daughter, Marsha said. 22 now. But yeah, I've done this. Julian leaned back. I'm not good at this. He admitted the parenting thing, and just like that, the walls started to come down. He told her about his wife, about how she passed during childbirth, about how he built this house thinking it would be full of family. But now it was just him and a baby he didn't know how to comfort. Marsha didn't rush to fix it. She didn't tell him what to do. She just listened, and when she finally spoke, she said it plain. Babies cry, but they also know who's holding them and who isn't. It wasn't meant to sting, but it did. Julian stared at the floor. The baby shifted in her arms, breathing slow and steady. In that quiet nursery, something shifted. A man with everything money could buy had to face the fact that presence wasn't something you could hire, and a woman used to being invisible just became the only calm in his storm. The next few visits weren't like before. Something had shifted after that first moment in the nursery. Marsha wasn't just the cleaner anymore. She wasn't just passing through. Now, when she came, Julian would actually be home. Sometimes, he'd be standing awkwardly in the kitchen, trying to hold his son and pour formula at the same time. Other times, he'd be pacing with the baby in his arms, looking like he was waiting for a lifeline. And every time, when Marsha stepped in, the baby would settle, and Julian would relax just a little. They started talking more, not deep stuff at first, just small things. How old the baby was, what time he usually cried, which bottle didn't leak. But one afternoon, when Julian watched her change a diaper one-handed while humming quietly, he asked, You said you have a daughter? Marsha smiled, her voice steady. Yeah, 22 now, just finished nursing school. Single mom the whole time. She didn't say it with pride or shame, just like it was fact. Julian looked surprised. You raised her by yourself, mostly. I was 19 when I had her. Got kicked out the house. Took whatever jobs I could find. Cleaned a lot of houses. Slept not much. but she always had what she needed. Julian was quiet for a second, then said, "That's impressive." Marsha shrugged. "It's just what you do when you love somebody." Julian didn't say anything right away. He just stared down at his son, who was curled up on Marsha's chest again, half asleep. After a long pause, Julian finally spoke. "My wife's name was Lena. She didn't make it past delivery. Everything happened so fast. I don't think I've really breathed since then." Marsha looked at him. Fully, "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it. He nodded. "I didn't even hold him the first few days. I couldn't. I kept thinking it was my fault. I built this house thinking she'd be here, that we'd raise him together. And now it's just me, and I don't know what I'm doing." Marsha didn't try to comfort him with pretty words. Instead, she said, "You don't need to know everything. You just need to be here." The baby stirred, then went still again. Julian watched that, how easily the boy rested with her. It made something heavy settle in his chest. He spoke again, softer this time. "He never calms like that, not even with me." Marsha looked at him and said, "Kids know who's paying attention." The room went quiet again, but not in a bad way. It was the kind of quiet that comes when something real is being said. A quiet that means things might actually change if people are willing. In those slow, simple moments, the walls around Julian started to loosen, not fall down all at once, but crack open just enough. And Marsha, without trying to, became more than someone who cleaned up messes. She became someone who saw the ones nobody else could. Over the next couple of weeks, the rhythm between them changed. Julian started trying more, showing up before Marsha arrived, sometimes already holding his son, other times halfway through changing a diaper or wiping spit up off his shirt. It didn't always go smoothly. He used the wrong bottle more than once, got peed on at least twice. But he was there, trying, and that was something new. Marsha noticed the small changes first. The crib had fresh sheets. The bottles were clean. There were even a few new toys scattered on the floor, not just perfectly arranged on shelves. The house felt different, less like a hotel and more like a place where someone actually lived. One morning, she showed up in jeans and a soft hoodie instead of her usual work uniform. No gloves, no mop, just her. Julian looked at her with a kind of surprise, like he didn't realize how different it felt until that moment. "You're not cleaning today?" he asked. "No," she said. "You don't need a cleaner. You need someone who sees the mess that's not on the floors." He didn't argue. They started spending more time just being, sitting in the living room while the baby rolled around on a blanket, talking about nothing and everything. Marsha teased him about how he held the baby like he was handling a fragile laptop. He joked that she made it look too easy. One evening, after the baby had fallen asleep, Julian looked across the room and asked something unexpected. "Would you ever consider coming back? Not to clean, to help, with him, with me?" Marsha didn't answer right away. She looked him in the eye and said, "Are you asking for help? Or just trying to pay someone to carry what you're not ready to hold?" He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "I'm asking for real help." She nodded slowly, but didn't smile. "Then let's see if you keep showing up." Things weren't perfect. They didn't suddenly turn into a family overnight. But something was changing, growing roots in quiet moments, in soft looks, in the way Julian started showing up with less fear and more heart. And Marsha, without saying it out loud, had stopped feeling like just a visitor. Just when things started to feel steady, life did what it always does: it tested them. One Tuesday afternoon, while Marsha was folding tiny clothes and waiting for the dryer to finish, her phone rang. It was a number she knew by heart, her daughter's high school. The voice on the other end said there'd been a fight in the parking lot. Her daughter, Taylor, was okay, but shaken. Someone had tried to jump her. No serious injuries. But still, Marsha didn't hear much after that. She was already grabbing her keys. She scribbled a quick note for Julian and left it on the counter. "Had to go. Call me." Then she was out the door. Back at her own place, it was a different world. Old carpet, a tiny kitchen, a couch with a dip in the middle, but it was home. Her daughter sat there with an ice pack and an "I'm fine" look. Teenagers give when they're anything but. Marsha hugged her tight anyway, made her a sandwich, turned on an old show they used to watch when things were simpler. No words were really needed. That night, when Marsha returned to Julian's house, she found him pacing in the kitchen with his phone in hand. "You okay?" he asked as soon as she walked in. "Now I am." she said. Then she told him everything, not in a dramatic way, just the truth. My daughter needed me, so I was there. Julian looked down. You could have called. I would have helped. Marsha shook her head. It wasn't about help. It was about history. She didn't need a ride, she needed her mom. He didn't argue, just nodded. After a pause, she brought up what he had asked before about staying, about being part of this thing they were slowly building. She looked around at the baby toys on the floor, the half-drunk bottle on the table, the small stain on the couch from earlier that week. It all felt real now, lived in, human. I can't move in, she said softly. Taylor's got one more year of school. She still needs me to. Julian's face fell a little, but he nodded. I get it. But, she added, I'm still showing up. I still love this boy, and if we keep doing this right, maybe one day we figure the rest out. The truth was, life wasn't going to pause and wait for them to decide. But this moment was their first test, and instead of breaking things, it just reminded them what mattered most. Showing up when it counts, even when it's hard. A few days after that long talk, Julian had a dream. He didn't tell Marsha about it right away, but when he finally did, it was in that quiet, open way people talk when they're too tired to pretend. He said he saw his wife Lena rocking their son in the nursery. She was singing a song she used to make up on the spot, the kind where the words don't rhyme and the tune doesn't matter. The baby was laughing, a big, full laugh Julian had never heard in real life. I just stood there, he said, eyes staring at the floor, watching her, watching him, and I realized I've never made him laugh like that. Not once. Marsha didn't say anything at first. She didn't rush to comfort him. She let the weight of it hang there. Then she said, maybe it's time to give him something to laugh about. Julian looked up, tired and honest. I don't know if I'm built for this. No one is, Marsha said. Not at first. You build yourself along the way. Later that day, after Caleb had gone down for a nap, Julian brought it up again, the idea of her being more than just help. I don't want you to just babysit or step in when I fall apart, he said. I want this to be something real, a real partnership, not just with the baby, with me. Marsha didn't give him an answer right away. She looked around the room at the folded blanket on the arm of the couch, the soft hum of the baby monitor, the picture of Lena still sitting on the shelf. Then she looked at Julian. I'm not trying to take anybody's place, she said, quietly. I don't want you to, he replied. I just want someone who's not afraid to be real. She leaned back and folded her arms. Being real means I'll call you out when your tone is off, when your head's somewhere else, when your baby needs more than a smart crib and a high-end stroller. Julian nodded. I need that. She stepped a little closer. And when your friends start asking why the cleaning lady is raising your kid, I'll tell them, he said. She was the first person who actually paid attention. They didn't hug. They didn't kiss. They just stood in that moment to people who had lost different things, but maybe, just maybe, were finding something better together, something they hadn't known they were missing. Things didn't suddenly become perfect, but they found their rhythm. Marsha started coming by a few days a week, not as the cleaner, not as a nanny, just as someone who cared. She'd show up early, sometimes catching Julian halfway through, feeding Caleb, other times finding him barely awake with cereal in his hair and a burp cloth still over his shoulder. No matter what the scene was, she always smiled, rolled up her sleeves, and stepped in like she belonged. The house felt warmer now, not because of the thermostat, but because it finally felt like someone lived there, someone who laughed, someone who cried, someone who showed up. There were baby toys scattered across the floor, a juice stain on the couch, and a handprint on the glass door that no one bothered to wipe off anymore. The place had lost its shine, and in a strange way, that made it feel more alive. One afternoon, while Caleb napped upstairs, Julian sat across from Marsha at the kitchen counter. He looked tired, but not the same kind of tired from before. This was the kind that comes after doing the hard work and knowing it's worth it. I had that dream again, he said, staring at the rim of his coffee mug, Lena holding him. But this time, I wasn't watching. I was holding him too. Marsha didn't say much, just nodded and let the silence do its job. After a moment, she asked, You think he'll remember any of this? Not really, Julian said. He's too young. He won't remember it with his brain, Marsha said. But he'll remember it with his body. Babies remember how they were held, how safe they felt, who looked at them with love. That Stuff sticks. Julian sat with that for a while. Then he said something he hadn't said before. You make this feel possible. Marsha gave him a look. It is possible. You just gotta keep showing up. As they talked, Caleb started to stir in the monitor. Marsha stood up, but Julian stopped her. I got it, he said, and he meant it. When he came back with the baby in his arms, Caleb looked happy, sleepy, and calm. He grabbed Marsha's finger and held it tight. She smiled down at him, and then up at Julian. This wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't even an ending, but it was real. And sometimes, that's more than enough. Time moved, like it always does. Caleb got a little older, started crawling faster, laughing louder, holding himself up on furniture like he had somewhere to go. Marsha kept showing up, still not in a uniform, still not trying to take over. Just steady. Julian kept learning. Some days were easier than others. Some nights, he still stared at the baby monitor longer than necessary, wondering if he was doing enough. But something had changed in him. He no longer saw fatherhood as a problem to solve. He saw it as something he got to grow into. One morning, after a long night with barely any sleep, Julian sat on the floor with Caleb in his lap and looked over at Marsha. You think I'm doing okay? He asked. It wasn't a joke. He really wanted to know. Marsha didn't give him a pep talk. She just looked at him holding his son, then said, You're here. That's more than a lot of kids get. He nodded. It was quiet for a moment. Then Caleb reached up and tugged at his dad's beard, giggling so hard it made Julian tear up. Marsha smiled. See, that's what he's going to remember. Not the fancy stuff, just this. Julian whispered, almost to himself, I used to think being rich meant having everything, and now, Marsha asked, now I think it means not missing the good parts. That was it. No big speech, no final lesson. Just three people sitting in a room where love wasn't loud or flashy, it was just present. And sometimes that's what makes all the difference, because in the end, showing up isn't about being perfect. It's about being there when it matters, and that kind of presence, that's the kind of love people remember long after they've forgotten everything else.